Hello, 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 good people, and welcome to Happy, Healthy, Whole with Sharia. I am your host, Sharia Farmer, and I am excited to have you here for another week for us to talk about healing and self-love as a priority in our lives as Black women. And so this week, I am talking navigating society, building Black women and our self-esteem specifically. And so I'm going to start off with our new segment, which is to heal or not to heal. That is the question. And really, this is about giving you an opportunity to hear some affirmations and or some mindset points that will allow for you to shift and or support your framing of positive affirmations and self-talk in your week, and just being intentional about it as we move forward. So today is I am more than a Black woman. And so I start that off because this one is about our self-esteem. And so when I open my eyes each morning, I realize that I am more than my race and my gender, more than my emotions, and more than my way that I'm seen through societal eyes, and so much more to what people may see. I am more than a nurturer. I am more than a friend, a family member, a sister, a daughter, a mother. I am more than all of those things. I am more than a Black woman. I am more than someone navigating racism, dealing with the intersectionality of gender and race. I am more than that. I believe that I represent a womanhood that is about strength and power, vulnerability, and resilience that looks like humanity. I am challenged to wake up each day and find ways to demonstrate that I am fearless and capable and strong in a way that also still connects to my humanity. I know that I can see and realize and even understand that there are things that are happening that are outside of my control based off of that identity, but I am not allowing it to be internalized as part of a negative of who I am. Only what is good and only what shall come from it. I am carrying many burdens of the historical racist and sexist and misogynist things that may have happened to me and or people who have identities like mine. But I am strong enough to recognize that I am not the person at fault, nor am I a person of continuing of personalized, internalized oppression. I channel myself through good things and flow out to others positive things around their identity and supporting them. And I do that so that I can also recognize my own humanity and my identity. Today, I celebrate the infinite things that make up who I am, the undefinable ones, the things that people can't see, my experience of things related to trauma and abuse, related to love and success. I celebrate it all. And I hope that it inspires you to do the same around your identity as a full person and a full human. And so today, as I think about our affirmation, I am more than a Black woman, it is not a negative to see that. It is not a negative at all to find that you are more than what people may assign to you by that identity, but you are also beautiful because of that identity. Therefore, let's do some reflection questions very quickly, just thinking about how do I react when I am not accepted by others? Do I teach my children to respect others regardless of their race and gender or other backgrounds that I may not even identify with myself? And how do I transcend the labels in a way that also still supports the acceptance that that label is a beautiful thing about who I am as a Black woman? Again, I try my best to do once a week where I actually check out the hashtag healing in joy, which is about really trying to give me an opportunity to answer questions, encourage others, and or see how you're encouraging others as you're healing and joy through your own experience. And so I check it out usually about once a week on the different social media platforms that I'm on. Obviously, I'm not on certain ones just because I have my own individual relationship with maybe possibly their owners. And protesting and supporting to me is important. So that being said, let's talk about what today's discussion is. Since I started off with an affirmation that was specifically about Black women, I wanted to make sure that we went there because today we are going to have a discussion about societal's pressures on Black women and how often it is that we have to face them and navigate them without, and then how do we do that without compromising your authentic self and who you fully are? And so many times as Black women, we face unique societal pressures that are truly going to impact our self-esteem, our self-belief, our well-being in ways that we both consciously and unconsciously recognize. And so navigating these pressures without compromising ourself and our identity and our authentic self involves a combination of self-awareness, resilience, and empowerment. And so today we're going to try to do the today we're going to try to talk about most of them. I know when I was writing down my points for this, it got long because I can talk about this for forever, but I don't want to labor on too much. What I may do is come back and hit a few of them individually. But I wanted to first start off with what are some things that we are addressing every single day that impacts our self-esteem. The one that we think of, or the one that I think of now more than ever, is our beauty standards. So conforming to Eurocentric expectations and standards has been one viewpoint, but also now having a viewpoint of trying to exploit and or use our traditional phenotypes that could actually be about our representation as the way to look, but not really then accepting it on a Black woman. So for example, having these different body altercations that are actually about filling up your lips or filling out your, making your waist small and your hips larger, right? Things that are actually sometimes, and I want to say the word sometimes, contribute to or are connected to us as Black women being celebrated as long as it's not on a Black woman, right? And so really thinking about the pressures of confronting those different standards, both now with the expectation that you meet a standard that may not be the Black woman that you are, and or still having to look at the Eurocentric eye point that looks at beauty from one norm, which is thin white women. And that may not be what all of us represent. The next thing that we think about when we talk about what societal things that we have to navigate is microaggressions. I know that I don't know if I've ever done one of these on an actual channel or in the podcast. So if you feel like you want a little bit more information on this one, I will, but try not to talk too much about some of these individually anymore. Just for my own healing and my own navigation of health and joy. But when we think about microaggressions, it's really about enduring these subtle, often unintentional, but sometimes intentional, discriminatory comments or behaviors that are kind of our normal everyday life things that we have to navigate. So it's like you're navigating like this, I want to say, landmine of little statements that might be subtle but very specific to your race or gender. So for example, someone might make a joke like, oh, I love fried chicken, and they're somehow directing that to you as a Black person when there's possibly all different cultures and everything in the room. And I'm not going to make the assumption that somehow as a Black woman that I love fried chicken, right? And that's an extreme example because it's actually a blatant one. But in some cases, they can be subtle. In other cases, they're not so subtle. And I think that's important to know because it's still a form of racism. But it's when the behavior can, so for example, and we know this one a lot, oh, you're articulate, you speak so well. I've had someone think or believe they were saying something as a compliment when they said, you're not like other Black women. And I'm like, what was that intended to be a compliment? Because then that indicates that Black women aren't beautiful, acceptable, and lovable as they are, and they're not enough, right? When uniquely I may show up one way as a Black woman, but that doesn't indicate that somehow because we're going to talk stereotypes in a minute, the stereotypes that you believe about Black women are even true, let alone that they are negative just because you don't accept them as positive and beautiful. Right. So microaggressions are these things that we kind of have to navigate often. I think social media, we've gotten to the point where now it's just blatant racism, where people feel confident that they can say things or post things that are very directly about your race, where it's like, oh, well, I have people that come to this channel and say things like, well, why are you only talking to Black women? When in reality, I'm navigating societal impact on Black women. And as a result, I'm responding to that, and I am a Black woman, so I have the right to decide for myself if that's what I need to start with when it comes to healing, right? And so thinking about it from that perspective, tokenism, when we think about tokenism, it's really this pressure of being the only one in the space, in the room, being the only Black professional in a social setting. I can remember when I first started going to different leadership things that I had to do related to my job. I was usually sometimes the only Black woman in the space. And then sometimes I was the only woman in the space, depending on which place I was navigating. And a lot of times, a lot of those microaggressions that we talk about come from those places. But a lot of times, this is a lot of pressure on us because then we have to represent whatever identity that we might be showing up as in that space. So if I'm a Black woman, if I'm a Black lesbian woman, if I'm a Black bisexual woman, if I'm a Black bisexual woman from a certain class, economic status, right? So then all of a sudden I have to represent all of these identities. I'm going to talk intersectionality in a minute, so don't worry. I got to represent all of these identities in one setting. And so there is a lot of pressure for being a Black woman who has to do that. And a lot of times, without even knowing, we don't realize the stress of having to do this so often that um, we've become so used to it that it's a part of our everyday that we don't even recognize that that's a stressful part that most people or some people never have to even worry about when they go into spaces or rooms. And when we think about stereotypes, these are facing preconceived or misconceptions about a entire race, and then adding race and gender, because I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and then contributing that to you. So it's like, all Black people, I use the fried chicken, all Black people eat fried chicken, all Black people are poor, all Black people have a background in poverty, right? All Black people, right? So putting us in a singular view or story without recognizing the different identities that we might have within, excuse me, I'm gonna take some water, within even our identity, but then also contributing negative factors to that just because you are a part of that group. Even if you don't represent whatever they're stereotyping about it, you should have the identity and or be able to connect with what they're saying around that. A lot of times this happened in my academic world when I was a professor. I would sometimes find that that the students or even the faculty sometimes would challenge you different based off of being a Black woman, would also feel more comfortable doing certain things or reporting certain things uh, to a dean or a department related to your grading, just because they may have a belief that you are less than them. So how dare you grade me in a way that says that I wasn't successful, and almost saying I mean, that could be a microaggression or a stereotype, but almost saying that I really shouldn't be in this position to be able to grade or mark them as acceptable or good in their standards or matrix for that grading. So those are examples. And then just double standards, career challenges. Like one of the things that we noticed, especially during the pandemic, was people were trying to address this racial equity lens, or work on a racial equity lens that showed up as many of our leadership positionings did not have Black women in them. It still maintains the statistically that it's still lower than other places. And now that people are less socially responsive. Oh, I like that one. Less socially responsive to George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and different concerns that we had during the pandemic related to racial inequities and racial disparities. What you'll notice is that we're starting to fall right back in line to not having the development of Black women or Black people in positions that will allow for them to kind of be promoted or developed in successfully, right? So those are just some of the things that we are navigating every single day. That's not to mention some of the things like accepting our own strength. That's not to mention colorism, internalized racism, relationship pressures. So these are some of the things that as Black women we navigate that impacts our self-esteem. And so I want to make that clear. Parenting challenges, relationship pressures, challenges. Every other week we have someone saying something negative about Black women related to relationships, be it a Black person, a Black male, a Black woman, be it someone telling us how we should or shouldn't be, or should or shouldn't show up in relationships. And so those are just some of the things that we think about as we're navigating these societal pressures that involve building our self-esteem, our resilience, our fostering of self-awareness, really knowing and understanding that all of those really do impact who we are. What I realized is that I'm going over a little bit more than I wanted to in this section. So I'm going to close us out for today there. Again, I'm going to come back and make this into a series, hopefully just a two-parter, just to keep us within the time frame that I wanted around these podcasts. And so that being said, I want everybody to take good care of themselves. Next week, we're going to talk about intersectionality and empowerment. It'll still be in the realm of navigating being a Black woman and our self-esteem, but I want to make sure that I honor the time frame that I wanted for each of these videos. Y'all take good care of yourselves. Have a beautiful rest of your week. Be well.